All right. Excellent. Welcome to Marriage Architects. This is our webinar on finding absolute fulfillment in relationship. I'm Scott Landis. This is Tanya Landis.
Hello.
We're married.
Yeah, we will be celebrating our 19th wedding anniversary this week. And we've been together for over 26 years. So we're really excited to be here tonight and share with you guys on how to find absolute fulfillment in relationship.
Yeah, and this is appropriate. Our name is Marriage Architects.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Renee. We're going to go ahead and mute everyone.
We will open it up for
I can't hear you. Okay.
All right. You got it? I'm controlling it too. Okay. All right, so our name is Marriage Architects, but we are, we work with couples, doesn't matter marriage status. So if you're in a committed relationship or whatever, just know that when we refer to the word marriage, however that applies to you, is cool. Also, when we work with couples, we work with the individual and we help them look at their own responsibility. So it's also appropriate for a single person to be watching this content and getting something out of it. So if you're a single person, you're looking at someday I want to be married, someday I want to be in a great relationship, and I've been frustrated with my progress so far of finding a good relationship, this is for you as well.
I don't know if I can do this. Pull something.
All right.
Sorry.
All right, so here we go. So what we're going to talk about today is, what does Marriage Architects do? What is your relationship strategy, and what is a dream marriage? So we'll get those out of the way. And then we're going to talk about how to achieve that dream marriage. And then we'll spend some time showing you our path to intimacy and fulfillment in relationship. And that's really what we want you to take away. And then the heart of our curriculum is unconditional acceptance. So we're going to spend some time really talking about what unconditional acceptance is and how that can be useful to you. So what does Marriage Architects help you do? We build a marriage to support your dreams. We call it a dream marriage because a dream marriage is really where it's a place where you can find ultimate human fulfillment, like the ultimate. And we're going to talk about why that is. But then we also help you create a blueprint for your dream marriage. The blueprint is sort of like a strategic planning document for your marriage where you note down what you're committed to, what the strategy is to get there, a vision for your marriage, the shared values you're looking for in your marriage. And Marriage Architects is all about enrichment. We have enrichment programs, we have transformation programs, and we really help couples with communication, of course. So this is what the marriage blueprint looks like. Every program that we work with couples on is kind of culminates around this. And you can see there, you can put your intentions and you can put your commitments and your action steps. So it's got all of that. I just wanted to show you briefly what that looks like. So let's get into what is your relationship strategy. So strategy matters because if you are going the wrong way, if that's your strategy and you keep getting unsatisfactory results or unfulfilling results, your strategy could be to blame. So sometimes simply switching up your strategy is all it takes. So we teach our couples a strategy different. So 9 times out of 10, we talk to a couple, I'll talk to the husband and he'll say, well, I know I'm not perfect, but let me tell you about all the problems with her. And then I'll get on the phone with her and then she says, well, I know I'm not perfect, but let me tell you all the problems with him. And they've got this wrong focus. They don't take ownership for the results they're getting in their relationship. They're looking at their spouse as the problem. And yes, both people are causing the problem, but that's the wrong focus. What you really need to focus on is yourself. And if you take complete responsibility for the results you're getting in your relationship, you can actually do something about it. You can actually change something. And I got this from Stephen Covey. He talks about, he breaks down the word responsibility as response-able. If you're responsible, you can change your response, and you're able to get a different response. You're able to do something about it. It takes you out of the victim mode and puts you in an empowered mode to do something about it. So again, obviously this works for singles as well as someone who's already in a committed relationship. But here's the new strategy. This is the strategy we teach our couples. Stop looking at them as the problem and start looking at your relationship with this thing we call the dream marriage. We're going to talk about what that is, but it's a separate entity. It's a separate thing to think about. So if I'm over here, I'm going to start looking at the dream marriage and what is that dream marriage and how's my relationship with that dream marriage. And by the way, that dream marriage is up here somewhere. That is, I'm not experiencing that now. That's beyond me. That's somewhere here. So what do I need to do to attract that marriage into my life? I obviously am not the person in that dream marriage. So what do I need to do to become that? And so I'm looking at myself differently and being responsible. All right. So here's what we mean by dream marriage. One thing, we get this from Tony Robbins. He talks about the 6 human needs, but growth and contribution is the highest level and where fulfillment comes from. The need for growth and the need for contribution. So the key to fulfillment in life is experiencing massive growth and contribution. The more growth and contribution you can experience in your life, the more fulfillment you're going to have. So imagine if your marriage is your reason to continually grow. So if Tanya is my reason to grow, like I want to do everything I can to help her get the most out of her life, I've got to grow to be the person that can help her with that. And if she's thinking the same thing towards me, and we're doing this, growth for each other, we're going to grow exponentially more than we would on our own. So marriage can be a very powerful way to find this kind of fulfillment. And by the way, my contribution comes from, I see these needs that she has, and I want to focus on her needs and make her, just light her up, just, make her come fully alive. I'm contributing to her life. And she's finding fulfillment from, all of her needs being met by me. I'm feeling great for the contribution I'm making to her life. And then I got to grow into my best self. And that's going to attract that dream marriage. So it's also about living the relationship disciplines. And I'm going to show you that in just a second. But the relationship disciplines give you the ability to connect and communicate with absolute caring and love. And living passionately makes it all come alive. So, this is all about, you can't have 2 people who are going, that are boring and not fully alive and not passionate, and have a passionate marriage, right? Those kind of people are going to have a boring marriage. But if you have 2 individuals who are passionate and feeling fulfilled and fully alive, you're going to have a passionate and fully alive marriage. You can jump in anytime you want to. So just let me know. All right, so here's the relationship disciplines. This is what I was saying makes that connection possible. So I'm just this is a whole nother webinar all by itself, but real quick, having absolute vulnerability, believing positive intent. No matter what behavior I'm seeing from her, I know that her intent is good and positive. Giving freedom and forgiveness freely. It's like pre-forgiveness, forgiving even for the things that haven't happened yet. If that's my state, if that's my attitude, she's going to experience freedom and using honorable language and cultivating intimacy all the time. Of course, give unconditional love. So those are the relationship disciplines. So here's kind of how it works. This has this reciprocal effect. It just keeps growing and growing. So if I start up here at the top and I grow, then I have more to give to her. And that, if I give more to her, the marriage begins to grow and she starts to grow. Then she has more to give and that comes back to me and my marriage really comes alive. And this just keeps going and going and going. Most things the law of thermodynamics talks about everything tends to degrade over time, but a process like this counteracts that. And the marriage can continually grow and continue to get better and continue to get more passionate. And we always talk about how many layers of the onion are there to this, passion. Let's find out. So in order to really understand this whole concept of, needs-focused couples coaching, you have to understand the 6 human needs. Again, we got this from Tony Robbins, and it's certainty, variety, significance, and connection are the first 4. That's the basic level of human needs. Everybody on the planet needs certainty. Everybody needs a little bit of variety at least, and everyone wants to feel some level of significance, and everybody needs to be connected in some way. Everyone on the planet has that. Not everyone on the planet has the ability to fill this need of growth and contribution. It takes resources for that. But again, to the degree that you meet these needs is the degree that you find fulfillment. All right, so here's how we help couples find that fulfillment. With that philosophy of the dream marriage and that strategy of the dream marriage, we take couples through a path to connection, intimacy, and fulfillment. And it starts with attitude. What is attitude? That's like, includes your mindset, and I used to fly airplanes, and you look at airplanes, and this is called the attitude, the way that the airplane is coming in. So if the airplane is like this, it's got an attitude going like this way, it's going down. So the attitude is also your approach. So how do I approach her? How do I, if I approach her softly instead of coming at her with, all guns blazing, that's going to change. That's attitude. So attitude is mindset. It's like being, watching how you think. If you can affect your thinking, that can have the biggest impact on everything. Then awareness. The second module is awareness. Awareness is about, being aware of what's going on. Like, I need to understand who she is. I need to be aware of how she's feeling. I need to be a student of her. And I also need to be aware of how I'm feeling. A lot of people don't even have the ability to look at themselves and say, okay, what am I feeling? And express it. So we do a lot of work with couples to become aware of myself, the ability to express it, the ability to understand her, the ability to, let her know I'm understanding her. That's a key component. And then acceptance. And we're going to dive a little bit more into acceptance in just a little bit, because that's the heart of our curriculum. So we want to leave you with that tonight and give you that understanding of what acceptance is. So I'll come back to that. And then attraction and awakening. And we just got off a webinar where we were teaching eight couples on actually 6 couples in a group coaching about attraction and awakening. And we can talk forever about that. So what we found is, to have attraction in a marriage that's been around for a while is so important. You start out a relationship with attraction, and a lot of couples lose it over time. So we talk about attitude, awareness, and acceptance as sort of the foundation of a good marriage. That's the stability. But if you want to have passion and come fully alive, you got to start with some attraction. You got to be attracted to each other. And so we help couples connect with their attraction and, start to find ways to be more attractive to each other, to find attraction in each other. And then from there, you can really get into this awakening. And awakening is about a body, soul, and spirit awakening. I mean, if you can, meet all of the human needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's self-actualization is the top of that concept, the top of that pyramid. And then beyond that is transcendence. Like, if you can get beyond, all my needs are met, I'm fully fulfilled, then there's transcendence beyond that, and come to a body, soul, and spirit awakening there. Within your marriage, then the passion really comes alive. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, a lot of times couples they'll believe that the intimacy is the problem and the sex is the problem right off the bat, and so they'll just want to skip directly towards the attraction and awakening. But you really can't get there until you have the foundation. And with the attitude, your mindset towards your spouse and your marriage, awareness, and full acceptance, which we'll get into more of that. And so you've got to do the groundwork in order to get get that intimacy with the attraction awakening. And so we really developed this path over our 10 years of experience in mentoring couples in marriage and relationships, and also in our own relationship over the past 26 years.
Yeah. And let me just mention real quick that, we have this, we don't have it in this slide deck, but this evaluation for couples to see where they're at. And a lot of couples are in a decent marriage. I mean, a lot of couples work at their marriage is pretty good, but they're missing the passion. And where we were is we had the transactional marriage.
We had a great relationship in terms of being like business partners and running our marriage and our family. We had a really well running, household, but there was no passion and no excitement. And we really wanted that. We desired that. We've had that, we've had a taste of that. And it was, it was really pretty functional, great functional relationship. But we were missing those key components that you really deserve in your marriage and your relationship, and you can get there. And so we went on a quest for hitting the next level.
Yeah. So that's what we found. And we spent a good couple of years at least, and it was tough. During that process, I mean, it was tough. We ended up, really stuck, and then we found breakthrough. And it was, thank God we did. We found breakthrough, and everything changed and everything came alive. But it was like teetering there for a while. And so we really have always had a heart for marriage and healthy marriage. But now we have a tool that helps couples like go from, functional and transactional to like fully alive. And, that's really what it's all about. Our vision for marriage is that it is the lifestyle of choice. Marriage has kind of fallen out of favor over the last couple of generations. We want to see that change. And so we want to bring more couples along this ride with us to have this kind of like full passion, full excitement, all of these things in place. So on the path, what it really is about, and this is just sort of a big summation of the whole thing, is if you can find healing, again, through that attitude and acceptance, then you find healing with each other. From that healing, you find peace. So peace comes from finding healing with each other, and there is freedom. And then when you have freedom, then, watch out, because then the passion just goes. So we basically get, that's what the path does. That's what the path to intimacy and fulfillment does ultimately. So that's kind of the big picture. So I want to tell you a bit about the heart of our program, Acceptance. And this is really what I hope you really find some value in this webinar tonight. So look at this concept that we got from a guy named Dan Savage. So he calls it the price of admission. So you imagine you get on a roller coaster ride for fun, but then you complain about the cost of the ticket the entire time. So again, we've all been at Disneyland or some, theme park, and we've been in a really long line, because the ride, it's the new ride, it's the one everybody wants to go on. And then you get on the ride and you have a whole bunch of fun. I mean, it's always worth that long wait after you get off, hopefully, right? And but what if you did this? What if you got on that long line, you got on the ride, and then you started complaining about it? So you're on the ride and you start complaining about it. Then, basically that long line wasn't worth this ride. The price of the ticket, the price of admission wasn't worth that ride because you're complaining about it. It's, it's like, and so we're on this ride together and I'm telling her, this is horrible. I hate this ride. It's no fun. I wish I never would have gone on it. The line was so long. The ticket price was so high. Would she ever want to ride that ride with me again? Or would I be crazy if I rode it again? But here's what we find in relationships is people start complaining about their relationship. They're complaining about their spouse. They're complaining about everything. And it's the same crazy idea. Like, why would you go on a ride that you're complaining about the whole time? Yet that's what people do a lot in a relationship. So what we want you to do is identify what are the top 3 things that you find, disgusting, unacceptable, or annoying about your spouse. Just kind of think about that. What are the top 3 things? It could be as simple as, like, sometimes Tanya she'll scoop some almond butter out and some jelly and put it on a rice cake, and then she puts that messy knife on the kitchen counter, and then the mess is on the counter, and then I might put my hand in that mess, and it's well, if I complain about that, that's the price of admission to ride this ride, and it's not a bad price. This is a very fun ride, and that's a price I'm willing to pay. So instead of complaining about it, I just instead say, okay, yeah, that's just part of the price of this ride. So it's just a paradigm shift for those things that we find annoying. So think about, what are those things that you find annoying? Anything out there?
Yeah, and that's really, it seems like when you get into that, when you start having problems in your relationship with their significant other, or you're just bored because you're in that transactional place like we were, those things become big things when really in the beginning they weren't that big of a things. Like laying a knife on the counter for like an hour isn't really a big thing. It's not a deal breaker, but if that's all he's focused on, then it becomes the whole thing. Like he will be focused on that knife, and that's getting almond butter on the counter, and really that's all he's focused on. He's not focused on the good parts. And that's what happens in a lot of relationships we found. And, that's what we want to, move you out of. So but do identify what are the top 3 things that you do have a problem with. We all have them, but, how are you, acting towards your spouse about those? Mm-hmm. There are things to cost, these things are the cost to ride the ride of the relationship. Decide once and for all if the cost is worth the ride. If it is, then make a vow to stop complaining about it. We've got a lot of quirks. There's obviously like some big things, and you have to decide if those big things are acceptable. Like we're not talking about addiction issues right now with this. That's a whole other issue. But those quirks, like always leaving the gas tank empty when somebody drives your car. Squeezing the toothpaste at the wrong spot, or, feeling like the other person, isn't doing their part in picking up the kids, whatever it may be, write it down and then decide if it's worth it. And if it is, then stop complaining about it.
Yeah. And then replace your usual response, which is complaining, or, your mindset is just like, disgust, right? Replace that with a new response. So brainstorm some different responses and pick the ones you'll do, right? So it could be, with the gas tank. I get in the car and the gas tank's empty. I could be totally upset about that, or I could just say, oh, well, I got to fill up the tank. No big deal. That's a much better. It feels much better to me to do that. And, it makes our relationship better. So what is the thing that you'll replace that? And I want you to write that down. So this is, again, we got this idea from Dan Savage. It's a brilliant idea. Love it. And it's just about changing your mindset. So here's another thing. I often talk about with my couples, managing expectations. So this visual here is like, if you imagine a rubber band between my hands here, if the expectation is up here and reality is down here, the greater the distance between the expectation and reality, the greater the tension, right? So there's 2 things you can do. You can reduce the expectation, or you can increase reality, or both. But that tension that you feel, there's tension, and the more unmet expectations, if you think about it, all marital dissatisfaction is unmet expectations. So the more unmet expectations you have, the less satisfaction you're going to have from your marriage. So it makes a lot of sense to look at these expectations. And, expectations, as it says, creates disappointment. Your happiness level is a direct reflection of your level of expectations. So we're high performers. We work with high performers. We're about setting bars high. We're about creating high expectations, high achievement, and that's the kind of people we work with. So we're not saying expectations in themselves are bad. In fact, there's, other relationship people out there that say, you should have zero expectations, and then there's others that will say you have to have high expectations. We say it's both. You got to manage this. You got to look at it differently. So that, what are you tolerating? So if you look at, your spouse's who they are and lowering your expectation when it comes to who they are. I love this analogy that I heard from Tony Robbins about, when you're potty training a toddler and they get and they're peeing in the toilet, but they get pee all over the wall, over the toilet, all over the floor. They get pee everywhere, but they got some pee in the toilet. Your expectation bar for that toddler getting 100% of the pee in the toilet is low, right? Because your expectation bar is low, you don't get upset when pee gets everywhere. You know that's going to happen. Do that with your spouse. Lower the expectation on what you expect from them to be perfect. They're a human. They're not perfect. And by the way, same for you. So lower your expectations there, but then you don't have to tolerate bad behavior. So you can have expectations and then manage the toleration. So if you're upset because your spouse is coming home late consistently, and they're not calling you ahead of time, they're not letting you know, that's a reasonable expectation that they would communicate with you, and you don't have to tolerate that. But when it comes to communicating that, there's a soft approach to it, and there's some real good tools, and we don't have time in this webinar to talk about it, but as far as how to approach that with your spouse. So that's what we want you to think about. And then there's 3 factors to consider in managing your expectations. If it's harmful or helpful, a lot of times when your expectation, you're expecting something that's causing harm, that's an expectation to get rid of. Are you expecting a fight out of it or peace? That can be harmful. If it's unrealistic, and so many of the couples we're working with, it's just about, hey, this is unrealistic expectation. Like the toddler doesn't get 100% of the pee in the toilet. That would be an unrealistic expectation. But a lot of times with our spouses, we just expect everything from them,
Yeah, we expect, and especially if you're in, like I talked about the transactional cycle, or you have a few problems, seems like we say like, oh, well, I don't expect anything from them. But then really you do, and your expectations increase because you're stressed. And then we go into this like, well, they didn't do that right. They're, basically where they need to be perfect. And really, can they ever meet that expectation? No, because no one's perfect. And so really look at, what your expectations are towards your significant other. Are they realistic? And have they been communicated? And like Scott said, we're not talking about things that are, reasonable, like calling when you're running late, or, picking up your children when you say you're supposed to, or anything harmful. But, often we'll be like, come home and, and I have been guilty of this. And I'm like, well, he's watched the kids all day while I've been doing something on the weekend, and the house is a disaster. And I, if I'm in the stress cycle, I'm like, why is the house not spotless? And even though you were watching all the children all day, and is that realistic? Did I communicate that with him? I didn't tell him. I, thought it in my head, but I never communicated that to him. But would it, those are things you really have to look at. So that's just one example. Like I said, we've worked with many couples, and there's all sorts of different expectations, but really evaluating what those are, because if your expectations are unrealistic or uncommunicated, you will be disappointed. There's no way they can meet them if they don't know, or if they're not realistically capable.
Another cool thing to think about is if you're expecting everything, your spouse can't win. That's a game your spouse can't win. Because even if they meet your expectation, they've just been adequate. But if you're expecting lower, if your expectations are lower or more realistic or more reasonable, and they exceed that expectation, they get to win. And that's a good thing. That creates happiness for them. So, and it's good to have that both ways, Think about your expectations. So here's another thing. When we talk about acceptance and unconditional acceptance, a lot of it comes from, unfortunately, from shame. People are carrying shame with them. So many people, it's like an epidemic, and blame can cause shame. So there's this cycle where, there may be resentment, and that turns to blame, and that shuts down your spouse. If you're blaming your spouse, you're going to shut them down. That's going to just make them feel shut down. They're going to go into a place where they're not going to become alive and not going to be their best state. And if they dwell there for long enough, they're going to feel so much shame. Like, I'm not pleasing my spouse. My spouse, is blaming me and resentful for all this stuff. And I just feel so much shame about it. I can't even do anything about it. I don't feel like I can win with my spouse. And they're going to hide who they really are. And so much about what, we're going to talk about this in just a bit, but their identity begins to suffer. They hide who they really are. Their fullness of who they are comes out. And then they're going to resent, hey, the reason I feel this crappy way is because you don't, I can't please you. And then it goes the other way. And now they're resenting you and blaming you. And then it's like back and forth. This thing goes on and on. And so many couples are on this. And, we want to help couples get off this. I mean, if you can get shame out of your relationship, if you're single and you're dating, get shame out of you. You got to deal with that. There's healing that needs to occur there. And so we walk our couples through this process of thinking about where they're at on this acceptance ladder. In fact, why don't you kind of take a look at this right now? We don't have too much time to spend here, but you got to really start by accepting yourself. Because if you're not accepting yourself, it's really hard to accept other people. And so where do you see yourself on this ladder? What we want to see people get to is an unconditional acceptance. If I accept her unconditionally for everything that she is, messy knife on the counter and all, and I just embrace and love that, then there's nothing that, can come between us. And that's like a North Star, right? That's very guiding principle. But unconditional acceptance, we are striving for that every day. So do that with yourself. How well do you accept yourself? Where would you like to be if you're not there yet? Let's say you're down, you just have a commitment to accept yourself. Then move that up to an intent. Then move that up to an appreciation of yourself. Move up that ladder. And then what limiting beliefs do you have in your head about who you are and what you're capable of? We like to dive deep with the people we work with on that stuff. Accepting your spouse. Does your spouse feel accepted by you? If they don't, they're on this thing here. Not accepting leads to resentment, shame, and blame. So do they feel accepted by you? And at what level from the ladder does your spouse feel accepted? What do you think? What are they perceiving? Not about what you think, but what are they perceiving? What do you need to do differently to move that up? What do you need to start doing? What do you need to stop doing? And then think about, how's my spouse accepting me? Where do you see your spouse accepting you on the ladder? How much do they accept you? And what could they do differently? And then you might even, if you're doing this with your spouse, you might even share that with each other. So that's a good practice there. What does it mean to be a partner in a dream marriage? Again, we talked about it's all about contribution and growth, and experiencing massive growth and contribution as an individual and in the marriage, and then living those relationship disciplines that I went over real quick in that pie chart. But to completely nurture and support their true identity. We talked about healing. That's where the healing comes from. And if you think about it, when you're a kid, your identity is really in the hands of your parents, right? Your parents, this visual here is like if you had this dirt, roots and little sprout and all in your hands, and that was part of your job in life, is to nurture this little plant and see it grow into what it was made to be, right? That's the true identity that's in your hands. So the parents had that when you were a kid, but now that's in your spouse's hands, or you are holding your spouse's identity in your hands. That is your job. Speak life into that. Whenever you criticize, you're killing it. Oh man, criticism can really destroy somebody's identity, and nobody has a greater power on the planet than you to speak life into that identity. So, you're answering the most important questions in the spouse's identity, like, who am I? Am I important? Am I valuable? Am I making a difference? Answer those questions. When, so many times I've seen, like, a lot of times there's a husband and wife we're working with, and she's just crying out for these questions to be answered because it wasn't handled very well in her upbringing. So her husband now has this, this power and this responsibility and this privilege, a ministry really, to really help her seek healing in her identity by answering those questions. So she might, throw a big fit and, yell and, say things like, why were you late from work? And they argue about that. But what she's really saying is, am I not important? Am I not valuable? If what I instruct him to do is, hey, don't answer the questions she's asking you. Don't argue about what you guys are arguing about. Instead, assure her that she is important and she is valuable. Nobody else on the planet has the power than a spouse to really speak that identity into someone. So think about that. So this is interesting. One of the things we do with our couples, once we get them to kind of really embrace the idea of unconditionally accepting each other, then we can have some room to really say, okay, let's get real here, because nobody ever talks about this stuff. And statistically, there's some issues in monogamy. So what is the state of monogamy? First of all, monogamy has changed. A couple generations ago, monogamy was, you marry someone for life, right? And you have sex with one person for your entire life. Now monogamy is, have sex with one person at a time. I'm monogamous on all my relationships. And, we've studied Esther Perel's couple of books, and she's really got a good take on this. And so monogamy's changed. So, it makes sense to really get real and don't put our head in the sand, but let's talk about this. What is our monogamy look like? Failure to be 100% faithful is a reality. Who is? The question is, what is faithful? In, one person's relationship, it might be something totally different than the other person's relationship. There are so many different styles of relationship these days that, we won't go into every one of them, but, there's just different takes on what a relationship looks like, let alone what monogamy looks like. So the other thing is, statistically, people are having more than one marriage. It used to be, again, a couple generations ago, it was rare for somebody to have more than one marriage. Now, it's like statistics are, you're going to have 2 or 3, so everybody you see, has 2 or 3 marriages in their lifetime. So, that kind of distorts the view of monogamy and faithfulness. And statistically also, there's affairs happening. And we believe that the reason why so many affairs are happening, and it's men and women, people are cheating, is because they're not talking about this. So we want our couples to, talk about this, because there's a lot of people that have indiscretion, but then it creates a crisis in the marriage, in the relationship, and then they work on it, and then they awaken to this passionate marriage. Like they realize, okay, you were missing something this whole time, I didn't know, and they start talking about it for the first time, and now they're able to meet each other's needs. Well, we're saying, let's do that before an affair. So let's get real, do the work and benefit now. And we're not doing it in this webinar, but when we work with our couples in our group coaching, by the way, we're going to have an opportunity for you to join our group coaching. I'll talk about it at the end, but in that group coaching, we talk about imagine yourself in an affair. Like, if you were in an affair, why would you do that? What would drive you to that? Was there something missing? What would you like about yourself? Would you feel fully alive there and for the first time in years? Why? So we get couples to think about this and actually have the conversation with each other. And it's fascinating, and it opens up the doors to, conversations that they have never had or have never even come close to having. So, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I think it's important. I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, we would never have an affair. And my spouse would never do that. But the fact is, and we have seen it over and over and over again from people we're friends with, from being in the industry that we're in with, being married. We've been marriage mentors for a decade, and we have seen couples you would never guess that have encountered affairs. And we, whether you've had one and you're rebounding from it, or, you're considering one, or you think, oh, I would never do that, we want to prevent it from happening in the first place. And we truly believe with our curriculum, we can do that. And if you're doing the work now, but we've seen it over and over, and it's devastating to a lot of families, children, both parties. And so really, taking a cold, hard look at, what, could this happen? And we walk couples through these steps, and all the couples we've walked through these steps are like, wow, that was really eye-opening, because I would never have thought about that. But yeah. And so the feedback's been really positive when we've used the exercise that we do use in our group coaching.
Yep. So that is a taste of this path to connection, intimacy, and fulfillment. And, this little symbol over here, we think about that as representing the dream marriage. And so this is to get to that dream marriage. And again, if you think about what is my ideal relationship, what is possible, if I take all the restrictions and hindrances off, and I think about what could actually be possible, we believe that it's possible for you. We are experiencing a relationship level we didn't realize was possible, and maybe it was in my wildest fantasies, but now is reality. And so can everybody have that? I don't know, but I think if people will do this work, they can. Again, we took 2 or 3 years of hard work, really hard and painful work. And we are so thankful that we did that experience and we came out of it together and alive together, because now we've got this curriculum and we can help couples do that without all that pain. And it's still hard work, but we can increase the speed at which it happens. For us, it was 2 or 3 years. We can do this in a weekend retreat with the couple, and we're all about transforming marriages. We want to see one marriage come in and a whole other marriage come out, and on the spot transformation. And that's what we want to see through this attitude, awareness, acceptance, attraction, and awakening. So that kind of gives you an idea. We want to give you an opportunity here. We are launching our next group, limited to 8 couples, because we spend a lot of time with each couple. We have to limit it. It's 8 live group sessions via video conference, just like this one here, and our transformative content. That is valued at $19.95. It's up on our website. You can check that. Pre-group assessments to set the foundation. So even before the group launches, we do a Prepare Enrich assessment, a 6 human needs assessment, and some other things. And then the one-on-one session with us. We tend to charge, about $250 for that. And then ongoing group coaching, support, interactions, and accountability within the group. Were you going to say something? And then all of that is a total of $27.80. So for you guys here, we're pricing that. This is our spring group, and we're basically cutting that more than in half for $9.97. We also have an option to pay 3 payments of $3.97 to make it easier for some people. But you can go, if you want to do that, you can go to our website. You just go marriagearchitects.com, and it's the Marriage Enrichment Group section, and you just hit the Purchase Now button. You can either, that'll take you to a payment form. You can either put in $9.97 or $3.97, whichever one you want to do. I don't even care. But then if you do that today, we'll include a bonus one-on-one session with us. And because we want to make sure that not only are you getting all that content and doing the exercises and the homework that we give each of our couples going through this program, we want to make sure that you really do absorb it and you get all the support you need. So we want to include that bonus session. So yeah, as soon as you do that, we'll get you started on these pre-workshop exercises.
The reason we do the pre-workshop exercises, it really helps us know exactly where you're at, so that we can make a plan for each couple on where we're going to take them. And so we do that, and then we do the one-on-one with you and really go through what your expectations of the group are, what you would like to get out of it, and then we go through talking with you guys and getting to know you so that we can best help you. And then you'll have the group coaching. We do screen all the couples that go in there because we want to make sure that it's a safe environment, and our previous ones have been. And also we offer a community page that you can be posting questions in, or you're always able to send us questions or share what's going on with you. And so it's really an awesome way to get started on building your dream marriage, and you'll leave the group coaching with a blueprint to your dream marriage. And it's really cool. We have a printout that you can do. You can take it to Kinko's and get it blown up. But we have ours in our closet because we have a walk-in closet, and every morning we look at it. But really, we want couples to get thinking about their dream marriage. Think about like how you would build your dream house. You would, lay the foundation. You'd meet with the builder to go over the plans, right? You would pick out your carpet. You'd pick out your tile or your granite. You pick out your furniture, all these things. So many couples will spend time on that, but they're not spending time on their dream marriage. They're just like, okay, this is what I got, but here I'm going to go build this beautiful home. How about taking that and putting that way of thinking into building your dream marriage and really achieving that? Because you don't want to live in that dream house by yourself. You want to live in it with someone else. So, and have that relationship that is fulfilling and where you feel accepted and understood, and that your spouse feels the same way. So you will leave with a blueprint of your dream marriage. And that's, the greatest gift that comes out of that. And it does come with hard work. We're not going to lie, but anything worth having is worth working for. And if this is the person, that you're sitting next to that you think you're going to spend the rest of your life with, or, you have committed to do that, then this is the way to help you achieve that, is, making sure you have that relationship that you desire.
Yeah. So we want also to give everyone here our book. So if you go to marriagearchitects.com/blog and you sign up for the newsletter within 24 hours here, so we know it's you, that we'll send you this, our 6 human needs in marriage. So it's find personal fulfillment and watch your spouse fall completely in love with you. So we kind of touched on the 6 human needs in this webinar, and this book will kind of go a little deeper in that. And so we do have that book up on Kindle, but we'll send it to you for free if you'll join our newsletter. You may already be on our newsletter, but just do it anyways. It won't double up, but so we know to send this to you. Let's see, and that is it. So I want to open it up for questions. We scheduled this for an hour, so we've got some time for questions. And I'm going to just put it up here on the path to intimacy and fulfillment, so that maybe I can address questions using that. So,
and if you can type your question in the chat and I'll read it. Or you can raise your hand and I'll unmute you, and you can go ahead and ask your question that way. Any questions? And if you do type in the chat, make sure to send it to Tanya, because we've got Scott's computer logged in and my computer logged in.
Oh, I might get it too.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're super excited. We did just, we are wrapping up our last group session with the people that we took through the group coaching, and we've had incredible feedback, and we're excited to launch our spring group. So if you would like to be part of it, Scott said, just go to our web link, and we'll post that in the event page on Facebook, so it's easy for you to click into there. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to Scott or myself, and we'll put our contact information in there as well. And we're excited for you guys. We're excited to help you build your dream marriage. So have an amazing Sunday night, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you.